Rancher sheltered two native girls. The next day, their mother arrived with a truth that shook him. John Miller was a man of the land. He had spent his entire life in the wide open spaces of Montana, far from the busy cities and noisy towns. His ranch was modest, with a small farmhouse, a barn, and rolling fields that stretched as far as the eye could see. He was used to quiet, to the rhythm of nature, and to the solitude that came with living in such a remote place. John liked it that way. He had never been a man to seek attention or company. Life on the ranch was simple, but it was hard work. Every day was filled with chores, feeding the cattle, repairing fences, checking the water tanks, and keeping the land in order. It was a life of routine, but it was a life that John understood and loved. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped low behind the distant hills and painted the sky in shades of gold and orange, John noticed something unusual. From the corner of his eye, he saw movement near the edge of the forest that bordered his property. At first, he thought it was just the wind swaying the trees or a deer passing by, but then he saw them, two small figures cautiously stepping out from the shadows. They were girls, both no older than 10 or 12, wearing simple, worn clothes. Their hair was tangled and their faces were streaked with dirt, but their eyes shone with a strange mixture of fear and determination. John froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. He had seen travelers and hunters pass through the area before, but he had never expected to find two children wandering alone in the wilderness. His mind raced. Were they lost? Had something happened to their parents? He did not know, and the uncertainty made his stomach tighten. But there was no time to hesitate. The girls were approaching, and they looked exhausted. Their small feet had clearly traveled a long distance, leaving them vulnerable to the cold, the wildlife, and the unforgiving terrain. He called out gently, "Hey there, are you girls all right?" The girls stopped in their tracks and looked at him with wide eyes. They did not speak, but their expressions told him enough. They needed help. John stepped forward slowly, keeping his hands visible so they would not be afraid. "Come on over. You can rest at my place. You don't have to be out here alone." The girls exchanged a quick glance, almost like they were deciding whether to trust him. Finally, the taller of the two nodded slightly. They moved cautiously toward him, each step measured and careful. John could see their small hands tremble as they walked. He could sense the weight of whatever they had been through, though he did not yet know the details. Once they reached the porch of his farmhouse, John guided them inside. The house smelled of wood smoke, fresh bread, and the faint scent of hay that always lingered on a ranch. The girls looked around nervously, taking in the small kitchen, the worn furniture, and the photographs of John's family long gone. He offered them chairs and a glass of water. "Drink this," he said softly. "You must be very thirsty." The girls obeyed, sipping slowly. Their movements were careful, almost hesitant, as though they were unsure if this man meant them harm. John watched them quietly, trying to make them feel safe. "My name is John," he said after a while. "What are your names?" There was a pause. The younger girl, who clutched her sleeve tightly, whispered, "Anna." Her sister, slightly older and more composed, said, "Maya." John nodded and smiled gently. "It's nice to meet you, Anna and Maya. You're safe here. No one is going to hurt you." Anna looked at him with wide, searching eyes. We didn't have anywhere to go," she said softly. Her voice was barely audible, but the words hit John's heart like a hammer. The thought of two small children wandering alone, scared and hungry, was almost unbearable. Maya, her older sister, glanced away, her lips pressed tightly together. She seemed to carry a heavier burden. as if she had been protecting her little sister for a long time. John knew he had to act quickly. "You can stay here tonight," he said. "I'll make you something to eat, and then you can rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out what to do next. But for now, you're safe." He led them to the small kitchen and began preparing a simple meal of soup, bread, and fruit. The girls watched him quietly, occasionally glancing at each other as if checking for danger. John tried to make conversation, asking them about their favorite foods and hobbies, but the girls only offered small, cautious answers. It was clear that trust had not come easily to them. As they ate, John noticed the exhaustion in their eyes. Their movements were slow, their heads drooped, and their hands shook slightly as they held their spoons. He realized that they had probably gone a long time without a proper meal or a safe place to rest. He felt a surge of compassion and determination. He would not let them go hungry or scared under his watch. After dinner, he showed them to the guest room, a small space with 2 beds and a window that looked out over the fields. The room was simple but clean, with soft blankets and a few books on the shelf. "You can sleep here tonight," he said. "I'll be just next door if you need anything." The girls climbed into their beds, still tense but slightly more relaxed. John could see that Anna was clinging to a small doll she had pulled from her bag, while Maya kept a tight grip on a worn notebook. They were holding on to pieces of comfort, fragments of the world they had left behind. John sat quietly in the adjoining room, listening to the soft sounds of the girls settling in. He thought about their journey, where they had come from, why they had been alone, and what dangers they had faced. His heart ached for them, but he also felt a strange sense of responsibility. These children had trusted him, and he could not let that trust be misplaced. As night fell and the wind rustled through the trees outside, John reflected on his life. He had spent years working the land, caring for his animals, and living in solitude. He had never imagined that one evening his quiet life would be interrupted by 2 frightened girls seeking refuge. Yet, as he listened to the gentle breathing of Anna and Maya from the next room, he realized that life sometimes brought unexpected challenges and unexpected opportunities for kindness. The night passed slowly, filled with quiet thoughts and distant memories. John could not sleep, thinking about the girls and what lay ahead. He knew that tomorrow would bring questions, revelations, and perhaps even more surprises. But for now, he was content to simply be a protector, a safe place in the middle of a vast, sometimes harsh world. By dawn, the first rays of sunlight touched the fields, painting everything in a soft, golden glow. John peeked into the guest room to find the girls still asleep, their faces calm for the first time in what seemed like forever. He smiled softly, feeling a mixture of relief and anticipation. Whatever their story was, he knew he would face it with them, step by step. The day ahead was unknown, but he had learned one thing clearly: kindness, no matter how small, could create ripples of hope that changed lives. And so the day began, not just for John Miller, the rancher, but for Anna and Maya, the 2 girls who had wandered into his life seeking safety and had found it in the most unexpected of places. The morning sunlight streamed through the small window of the guest room, casting warm beams across the beds where Anna and Maya were still asleep. John Miller sat at the kitchen table with a steaming cup of coffee, watching the steam curl into the air. He felt a quiet sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. Yesterday had been unexpected, to say the least, and yet something about it felt right. The 2 girls who had appeared at his doorstep had awakened something in him he hadn't realized was there: the desire to protect, to care, to be more than just a man alone on his land. As the clock ticked past breakfast time, the girls began to stir. John prepared a simple breakfast of scrambled eggs, toast, and fresh fruit, hoping it would provide them with strength for the day. The kitchen smelled comforting, and the gentle clatter of dishes and silverware filled the room. Anna and Maya appeared slowly, rubbing their eyes and trying to shake off the remnants of sleep. Their small faces were calm but still carried traces of worry, the kind that only children who have seen too much too soon can show. John gestured toward the table. "Breakfast is ready. You both must be hungry." Maya nodded slightly, her eyes scanning the room as if still unsure of this new environment. Anna, on the other hand, moved with a quiet eagerness, her small hand reaching for the toast. They ate in silence at first, each lost in their own thoughts, until John began to speak softly, hoping to make them comfortable. "So, tell me something about yourselves. What do you like to do for fun?" he asked, keeping his voice gentle. Anna paused, glancing at her sister before answering. I like to draw," she said quietly. "I draw pictures of animals, and sometimes the places I imagine." John smiled. "That's wonderful. And I have a lot of animals here on the ranch. Maybe you can draw some of them one day." Maya shifted in her seat, her eyes downcast. She was more cautious, more guarded, as if speaking too much might somehow put them in danger. But slowly, she opened up. "I like to read stories," she said softly. "My mom used to read to us every night." John felt a warmth spread through him. These small glimpses into their lives, their interests, were more than just facts. They were signs of hope, signs that despite everything they had been through, they were still children with dreams and imagination. After breakfast, John suggested they take a walk around the ranch. The girls hesitated at first, glancing toward the fields with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "And it's safe," John assured them. "I'll be right here. You don't need to worry about anything." The girls finally agreed, and the three of them stepped out into the open air. The morning was crisp and bright, the sky a clear blue, and the gentle rustling of the grass and the breeze made the world seem peaceful. Anna ran ahead, her small feet kicking up dust as she laughed quietly. Maya followed, slower, her eyes taking in every detail: the fences, the barns, the cattle grazing lazily in the distance. John watched them closely, his heart swelling with a protective instinct he hadn't known he possessed. As they walked, John began to point out the different parts of the ranch. "Over there," he said, gesturing to the barn. "We keep the cattle and the horses. They need a lot of care, just like you do when you take care of something important." Anna's eyes widened. "Horses?" she asked, excitement creeping into her voice. John nodded. "Yes, they're gentle, but strong. They can teach you patience if you spend time with them." Maya watched silently, but John could see a spark of interest in her eyes. She was more reserved than Anna, but he knew that trust and curiosity were growing quietly inside her. For the next hour they wandered through the fields, stopping to watch the cows and pet the horses. Anna's laughter was light and free, a sound that warmed John's heart. Maya remained more cautious, but every so often she would smile softly, allowing herself to enjoy the simple pleasures of the ranch. After the walk, they returned to the farmhouse. John suggested they do something creative inside, hoping to give the girls a sense of normalcy and comfort. He brought out some paper, pencils, and crayons, encouraging Anna to draw whatever came to mind. Anna eagerly began sketching the animals she had seen, her small hands moving with focus and delight. Maya, initially hesitant, eventually picked up a pencil and started writing a story about a girl who lived on a ranch far away from the city. John watched them, amazed at their resilience. They had been through so much, yet here they were, finding joy and expression in small, meaningful ways. It was a reminder that even in difficult times, hope could flourish and the human spirit could endure. As the morning turned into afternoon, John noticed the girls starting to tire. He suggested a quiet break and brought them some water and snacks. They sat together in the living room, Anna drawing and Maya reading, while John quietly reflected on the events of the previous day. He wondered where the girls had come from, why they were alone, and what challenges they had faced. He did not want to pressure them, knowing that trust could not be rushed. Instead, he resolved to be patient, to offer safety and understanding, and to let them reveal their story in their own time. It was then that John heard a soft voice behind him. "Mr. John, why did you help us?" Anna asked, her eyes looking up at him with genuine curiosity. John paused, considering his answer carefully. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said finally. "Everyone deserves help when they are in trouble, and I couldn't just let you be out there all alone." Anna nodded slowly, accepting his words, while Maya looked away, her expression thoughtful. It was a small moment, but it carried weight. The girls were beginning to understand that kindness could exist even in strangers, and that trust, once given, could provide strength. As the day went on, John suggested they explore the barn. He showed them how the animals were cared for, how the feed was stored, and even let them brush one of the horses. "Ah!" Anna's laughter rang through the barn as the horse nuzzled her hand, while Maya's initial nervousness faded into quiet fascination. The experience was more than just a distraction. It was a lesson in responsibility, empathy, and connection with nature. By evening, the girls had grown more relaxed around John. They asked questions, shared small stories, and even joked quietly with each other. John felt a sense of accomplishment and relief. He realized that, in just one day, he had begun to build a bridge of trust with them, a foundation that would be crucial for whatever lay ahead. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, John prepared a simple dinner. The girls ate heartily, and for the first time he noticed a genuine sense of calm on their faces. The house, once quiet and tense, now carried warmth, laughter, and the beginnings of a bond that was slowly forming. After dinner, they all sat together by the fireplace. John told stories about his childhood on the ranch, about the challenges and joys of working the land, and about the animals he had cared for over the years. The girls listened intently, asking questions and sharing their own small experiences. It was a moment of connection, a quiet understanding that even though their lives had been so different, they could find common ground in simple stories, laughter, and shared experiences. As the night drew near, John showed the girls to their room once more. Anna yawned widely, climbing into her bed with a sleepy smile. Maya followed, carefully placing her notebook on the small table beside her. "Good night, Mr. John," Anna whispered, her voice filled with warmth. "Good night, Anna. Good night, Maya," John replied softly. He stood in the doorway for a moment, watching them sleep peacefully. A sense of hope filled him. He knew the journey ahead would not be easy, that challenges and surprises awaited them. But for now, there was peace, safety, and trust. And sometimes that was enough. As he returned to his own room, John reflected on the day. The girls had come to him wary, frightened, and alone. By the end of the day, they had begun to feel safe, to explore their surroundings, and to show glimpses of their personalities and resilience. John realized that he was not just a rancher now. He was a protector, a guide, and a friend, and in doing so, he had discovered a deeper purpose, one that gave his quiet life new meaning. Tomorrow would bring new questions, new challenges, and perhaps even surprises. But for tonight, John allowed himself to simply feel gratitude for the unexpected turn of events, for the trust the girls had placed in him, and for the small but meaningful moments that had begun to shape their journey together. The morning was quiet on the ranch, the sun just beginning to rise over the rolling fields. Birds chirped softly, and the gentle wind carried the scent of fresh grass and earth. John Miller had already started his morning chores, checking the water tanks and feeding the horses. The rhythm of the ranch was comforting, but his thoughts kept drifting back to Anna and Maya. Over the past 2 days, he had grown attached to them, more than he expected. Their laughter, their small gestures of trust, and their curiosity had awakened something in him that he hadn't felt in years, a sense of responsibility for lives other than his own. The girls were in the kitchen, quietly eating breakfast. Anna had drawn a picture of the barn and the horses yesterday, which she proudly showed to John. Maya was reading a small storybook, occasionally looking up to watch the cattle grazing in the fields. They seemed calmer than the first day, though John could tell that shadows of fear and uncertainty still lingered in their eyes. It was clear that their time wandering alone had left a mark, one that would take time to heal. Suddenly, the sound of a vehicle approaching the ranch broke the morning calm. John turned toward the road, frowning. The girls froze, glancing nervously at the window. Their expression shifted subtly from curiosity to anxiety. John felt an instinctive tension rise in his chest. Visitors were rare on this property, and at this moment, the vehicle's presence was unusual. As the truck drew closer, a woman stepped out. She was tall, her posture strong yet worn, as if life had forced her to carry burdens far heavier than she should have. Her eyes were sharp, scanning the surroundings with a mix of concern and determination. When she saw the farmhouse, her expression softened slightly, but her steps remained purposeful. John felt a sudden understanding. He didn't know this woman, but somehow he sensed that she was connected to the girls. His heart quickened. "Girls," he said gently, "I think someone is coming to see you." Anna and Maya exchanged a quick glance. Anna's small hand gripped Maya's, her eyes wide with fear. Maya, older and more composed, seemed torn between relief and apprehension. "Is it our mom?" Anna whispered. John shook his head slowly. "I don't know, Anna, but whatever happens, you're safe here. Remember that." The woman approached the porch. Her voice carried authority, but also a tremor of worry. "Anna? Maya?" she called softly. The girls froze, recognizing the tone immediately. The moment was electric, tense with emotion, and fragile with uncertainty. The girls hesitated. They had been alone for so long, surviving by themselves, that the idea of someone arriving, someone they knew, was both comforting and frightening. Slowly, they stepped toward the door. John opened it for them, standing slightly behind, giving them space to make their choice. The woman's eyes softened as she took in the sight of her daughters. Relief and fear mingled in her gaze, and for a moment she simply watched them, as if trying to memorize every detail. "I'm so glad you're safe," she said quietly, her voice breaking slightly. Anna ran forward, her small arms wrapping around the woman in a tight embrace. Maya followed, though more cautiously, resting her head against her mother's shoulder. The reunion was bittersweet, filled with the joy of finding safety and the unspoken pain of past hardships. John watched silently, aware that this was a deeply personal moment that he could not intrude upon. Once the initial embrace was over, the woman turned to John. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Thank you for taking care of them." John nodded, feeling a mix of humility and relief. They were in need. I couldn't just leave them out there alone. Ah. She looked at him, her gaze sharp now, a flicker of tension in her eyes. I need to explain everything. But first, I need my daughters. The girls clung to her, and John realized that while he had provided safety and comfort, there were truths he had not yet been told, truths that might change everything. He had been a shelter in the storm, but the storm itself was more complicated than he could have imagined. They sat together in the living room. The woman, her name was Lila, explained that life had not been easy for their family. She spoke carefully, choosing her words with precision. "Things have been difficult," she began. "I tried to protect them, but there were challenges I couldn't overcome on my own." Her eyes met John's, silently asking for understanding. Anna and Maya listened quietly, absorbing their mother's words. There was a mixture of relief, confusion, and curiosity in their expressions. They had lived alone for so long, relying only on each other, that hearing another adult acknowledge their experiences was both shocking and comforting. Lila continued, her voice steadying as she spoke. "You were brave to leave, to seek help. I am proud of you for that, and I am grateful to the man who kept you safe." She gestured toward John, who remained modest, shifting uncomfortably under the praise. John felt a surge of emotions. He had not sought recognition or thanks, but hearing Lila's gratitude made him realize the impact of his actions. These girls had walked into his life in a moment of vulnerability, and by being kind, he had helped change their path. The conversation took a serious turn as Lila shared more details. She spoke about the difficulties they had faced, circumstances that had forced her daughters to leave home and seek refuge elsewhere. The words were carefully chosen, meant to convey truth without causing further distress. John listened intently, understanding that this moment was crucial for both the girls and their mother. Anna and Maya absorbed the information with wide eyes. They asked questions, sometimes softly, sometimes hesitantly. Lila answered each one patiently, reinforcing that the past hardships were not their fault. John watched in awe at the way she handled the conversation, firm yet compassionate, honest yet protective. After the initial discussion, Lila turned her attention to John. "I know this is sudden," she said, "but I want you to know that your kindness made a difference. You didn't just provide shelter, you gave them hope, and sometimes that is more important than anything else." John nodded, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He realized that his life on the ranch, which had always been solitary and predictable, had been touched by something extraordinary. The arrival of Lila and the revelation of the girl's struggles had brought clarity to the meaning of his actions. He had not acted for recognition or reward, but in that moment he understood that simple acts of care could ripple far beyond what one might expect. The rest of the morning was spent in quiet reflection. The girls stayed close to their mother, occasionally glancing at John with shy smiles. He helped prepare a small meal but mostly stayed in the background, allowing the family to reconnect. The atmosphere was a mixture of relief, understanding, and cautious optimism. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, John realized that this day marked a turning point, not just for Anna and Maya, but for everyone involved. The girls had found their mother, but they had also discovered a safe place, a person who could be trusted in moments of fear. Lila had found the reassurance that her children were cared for, and John had discovered that his quiet life could carry profound meaning when filled with compassion. Eventually, Lila thanked John again and prepared to leave, but not before ensuring that arrangements were made for the girls' future safety. Anna and Maya hugged John tightly, expressing gratitude in the only way children can, with small gestures that carry enormous emotion. John felt a lump in his throat. realizing that this brief but intense connection had changed him in ways he had not anticipated. As the family departed, John stood on the porch, watching the truck disappear down the dirt road. The fields seemed quieter now, the wind carrying a sense of emptiness mixed with peace. He knew that life would return to its normal rhythm on the ranch, but something fundamental had shifted. He had seen firsthand the courage of two small children, the resilience of a mother, and the power of simple human kindness. John returned to his house, reflecting on the events of the day. The ranch, once just a place of work and solitude, now felt like a witness to a story of bravery, trust, and connection. He realized that moments of crisis could reveal the best in people, and that even in difficult circumstances, hope and compassion could prevail. As evening fell, John sat quietly by the fireplace, thinking about Anna, Maya, and Lila. The memory of their faces, their laughter, and their courage stayed with him. He understood that his actions had created a ripple of change, touching lives in ways he could not fully measure. And for the first time in a long while, he felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that he could make a difference simply by being present, caring, and willing to help when it mattered most. The next morning, the ranch was bathed in a soft golden light, the kind that makes the world seem calm and full of possibilities. John Miller had already started his morning chores, but his mind was not on the tasks at hand. Yesterday's events had left a lasting impression on him, and today, he sensed that something more was about to unfold. Lila, the girl's mother, had returned early that morning, asking to speak with John privately. Her eyes were serious, her hands gripping the steering wheel of her truck as she paused at the farmhouse. John met her at the porch, sensing the weight behind her words before she spoke. "John," she began, her voice steady but carrying an unmistakable urgency. "I need to tell you the full truth about why my daughters were alone yesterday." John nodded, understanding that this conversation would not be easy. "I'm listening," he said quietly. Lila took a deep breath. "Anna and Maya, they have been living in a situation that was difficult and unsafe. I tried my best to protect them, but there were things I could not control. I thought keeping them at home was the safest choice, but I was wrong. Yesterday, they made the decision to leave on their own. I only found out after they were gone." John felt a lump form in his throat. He had suspected that there was more to the story, but hearing it directly from Lila made it painfully real. The idea that these small, courageous girls had ventured into the unknown on their own was both heartbreaking and awe-inspiring. "They were scared," Lila continued, her voice softening as her gaze shifted to the horizon. "They didn't know where to go, who to trust, or what might happen to them. And then, you found them. You gave them safety when no one else could. I cannot thank you enough for that." John shook his head. "You don't have to thank me. I did what anyone should have done. I just didn't expect that it would mean so much." Lila's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "It means the world, because it gave me a chance to see them safe, to finally tell them that their courage mattered, and that they were loved. But there's more you need to know." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "They left home because I was not able to protect them from the problems inside our household. There were adults I trusted to help, and they did not. I thought I was keeping them safe, but I couldn't." John listened in silence, careful not to interrupt. He could see the burden she carried, the guilt, the worry, the relief that her daughters had survived the ordeal. It was clear that her heart had been heavy for a long time, and the events of the past 2 days had brought both fear and relief in equal measure. "They are strong," Lila said, her voice firm now. "But even strong children can be hurt if left without guidance. I wanted to shelter them, but I failed in ways that I cannot undo. I'm telling you this not to place blame, but to explain why they ended up at your door." John felt a mix of emotions: sadness for the girls, empathy for their mother, and awe at the courage of all of them. The reality of their situation was more complex than he had imagined. These were not just children who had wandered. They were survivors of circumstances far beyond their years. Anna and Maya, who had been quietly observing the conversation from the living room, now stepped forward. "Mom," Anna said softly, her small voice trembling. "We were scared, but we wanted to be safe." Maya nodded. "We didn't know where to go, but we trusted Mr. John." Lila looked at John, her eyes filled with gratitude and relief. "They listened to him, and he gave them comfort when I couldn't be there. That is something I will never forget." John felt a warmth in his chest. The girls' trust had been placed in him, and he had not failed them. Yet, he also realized the gravity of the situation. They had been living with challenges that were difficult for anyone to imagine. Their courage, their ability to survive, and their willingness to trust were extraordinary. "Lila," John said gently, "you did what you could, and now they are safe. That is what matters. The past cannot be changed, but we can make sure the future is better for them." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I know, and that is why I came here today. I needed to be honest with you, and with them. I needed to tell the truth so we could move forward." The room fell quiet for a moment. The only sounds, the soft rustling of the trees outside and the gentle ticking of a clock. It was a moment heavy with emotion, a pause that allowed everyone to process what had been revealed. Anna climbed onto her mother's lap, resting her small head against her chest. Maya stood close, holding her mother's hand. John watched, feeling a profound sense of connection to this small family. The trust and love in the room were palpable, and he realized that his role was no longer just a protector. He had become a witness to healing, a part of a story that was only beginning to unfold. Lila continued, her voice steadying. "I want to make things right for them. They deserve safety, love, and a life without fear. I am committed to that, but I also want you to know that what you did, taking them in, providing shelter, listening to them, it mattered more than words can express." John nodded, humbled by her words. "I only did what felt right. But knowing that it helped, that is enough for me." The girls began to speak more freely now, sharing small details of what they had experienced before coming to the ranch. Their stories were gentle and careful, told in bits and pieces, but they revealed the depth of their courage and resilience. They spoke of fear, uncertainty, and the challenges they had faced, but also of hope, trust, and the relief they felt in finding someone who cared. John listened, offering comfort when needed, but mostly allowing them to express themselves. He understood that the act of speaking, of sharing their truth, was a critical step in their healing. Each word, each story, strengthened the bond between him, the girls, and their mother. By midday, the atmosphere in the house had shifted. What began as a conversation filled with tension and uncertainty had become a moment of understanding and connection. The truth had been revealed, and with it came relief, gratitude, and a renewed sense of hope. John realized that while the past could not be changed, the present offered opportunities to build safety, trust, and love. Lila smiled at John, a small but genuine expression of appreciation. "You showed them that kindness exists in the world, even when it is hard to find. That is a gift I cannot repay." John felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The ranch, once just a place of work and solitude, had become a sanctuary, a place where courage, trust, and compassion could flourish. He understood that the experiences of the past days would stay with him forever, shaping the way he saw the world and the role he could play in the lives of others. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, Lila prepared to leave once more, this time with a clear plan for ensuring her daughter's safety and well-being. She thanked John again, emphasizing that his actions had not only saved the girls, but had also given her hope for the future. Anna and Maya hugged John tightly, expressing gratitude in the way only children can, with warmth, innocence, and sincerity. John felt a lump in his throat, realizing that this small connection had grown into something profound. The experience had changed him, opening his heart and mind to the impact of compassion and the strength of human resilience. As the truck disappeared down the dirt road, John stood on the porch reflecting on the events of the day. The ranch, once a place of solitude, had become a witness to courage, truth, and connection. The girls had faced fear and uncertainty with bravery. Their mother had confronted her past with honesty, and John had been given the opportunity to provide safety and hope. He returned to the house, feeling a mixture of relief and quiet pride. The day had been heavy with emotion, but it had also been filled with moments of understanding, compassion, and trust. John realized that the true value of life was not measured in possessions or achievements, but in the way people treated one another, the way they offered kindness, protection, and love when it was needed most. As evening fell, John sat by the fireplace, reflecting on the journey that had brought Anna, Maya, and their mother to his ranch. The memory of their courage, their trust, and their resilience stayed with him, a constant reminder of the power of human connection. He understood that while the path ahead might still hold challenges, the foundation of trust, truth, and compassion had been firmly established. And in that quiet moment, John felt a deep sense of purpose, knowing that even in the simplest acts of kindness, offering food, shelter, and a listening ear, lives could be changed forever. Across the landscape. John Miller walked through the yard, taking in the familiar sights of the barn, the grazing cattle, and the wind gently rustling the tall grass. Yet something had changed. The world seemed larger, deeper, and more alive than it had before. The events of the past few days had left a mark on him, a reminder that even in a life of solitude, unexpected moments could transform everything. John thought about Anna and Maya. Their small faces, wide-eyed and brave, had stayed with him constantly. He remembered the first day they had arrived, frightened and weary, unsure if they could trust him. He remembered the moments when they began to open up, when laughter and curiosity replaced fear. And he remembered their mother, Leela, strong and honest, confronting difficult truths for the sake of her children. These memories stirred something inside John, a mixture of gratitude, humility, and renewed purpose. He walked toward the barn, where the horses were grazing lazily in the morning sun. Running his hand along the warm, smooth coat of one of the animals, he thought about how simple acts of care, feeding an animal, offering shelter to a child, could ripple far beyond what one might expect. Life on the ranch had always been routine, predictable even, but in the past few days, he had discovered that it could also be a place of connection, courage, and healing. The memory of Anna's laughter and Maya's quiet curiosity made him smile. They had trusted him when they had nowhere else to turn, and he had learned something profound about responsibility, empathy, and the power of kindness. It wasn't just about feeding them or providing shelter. It was about showing that someone cared, that they were not alone, that their courage and struggles were seen and valued. John thought about the conversations he had shared with Lila, The honesty and vulnerability she had shown had left a deep impression. She had revealed truths that were difficult, painful even, yet necessary for healing. Through her words, John understood that the past could not be changed, but it could be acknowledged, and through that acknowledgement, a safer, brighter future could be built. He remembered the moment when the girls had first arrived at his doorstep. Their tiny, trembling hands and cautious eyes had reminded him of the fragility of life, of how easily fear and uncertainty could overwhelm even the strongest spirits. And yet, in the same moment, he had also seen resilience, the spark of courage that had driven them to seek safety, to take steps that most adults might have found terrifying. John realized that life often presented moments of unexpected responsibility. Sometimes these moments came quietly, disguised as ordinary encounters. A knock on the door, a stray animal in need, a child looking for help. But their impact could be extraordinary. The girl's journey to his ranch had been one such moment, a catalyst for change not just for them, but for him as well. As he continued walking through the yard, John reflected on how trust had been built. At first, the girls had been wary, reluctant to speak or accept help, but through patience, gentle words, and small acts of care, they had begun to open up. Trust, he realized, was fragile. It could be broken easily, yet when nurtured, it could grow into something strong and transformative. He felt a profound respect for Anna and Maya, for the way they had chosen to trust, for the courage they had shown in stepping into the unknown. The memory of the girl's mother stayed with him as well. Lila had faced her own challenges, carrying the weight of responsibility, fear, and guilt. Her courage in confronting the truth, in taking steps to protect her daughters, had been remarkable. John thought about how difficult it must have been for her to accept that she could not solve every problem, that sometimes circumstances were beyond her control. And yet, she had acted. She had sought solutions, and she had chosen honesty. That, John realized, was another kind of bravery. The ranch felt alive with the echoes of these events. Each corner of the property seemed to carry memory. The sound of laughter in the barn, the tiny footprints on the porch, the quiet moments of reflection by the fireplace. John understood that the ranch had been more than a home. It had been a sanctuary, a place where trust, courage, and compassion had been nurtured. He went inside and sat by the fireplace, gazing at the flickering flames. The quiet of the house was comforting, yet his mind was full of thoughts. He considered the lessons he had learned over the past days. Life, he realized, was unpredictable. It could bring fear, hardship, and sorrow, but it could also bring hope, joy, and connection. And sometimes, the two existed side by side. John thought about the girls' journey, the courage it had taken for them to leave home, to seek safety, and to trust a stranger. He thought about their mother's strength, the honesty and love that had guided her actions. And he thought about himself, a man who had spent years in solitude, discovering that kindness, when offered sincerely, could change lives in profound ways. The thought filled him with a deep sense of gratitude. He had been given the opportunity to make a difference, to offer safety, comfort, and hope to those who needed it most. And in return, he had learned about resilience, trust, and the quiet power of human connection. The experience had enriched his life in ways he could not have imagined, and he knew that it would stay with him forever. As the day turned into evening, John decided to take a walk through the fields. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and gold. The world felt peaceful, yet alive with possibility. He walked slowly, absorbing the beauty of the moment, reflecting on how quickly life could change and how a single act of kindness could ripple outward, touching lives in ways that could never be fully measured. He thought about the future for Anna and Maya, Their lives had been marked by hardship, but now, with their mother by their side and a network of support around them, there was hope. He imagined them growing up strong, confident, and secure, carrying with them the memory of the kindness they had encountered and the courage they had shown. John also thought about himself. The experience had changed him, deepened his understanding of the world, and expanded his sense of purpose. He realized that the ranch was not just land to tend, but a place where lives could intersect, where trust could be built, and where hope could flourish. He felt a renewed commitment to helping others, to being present when someone needed guidance, and to offering kindness without hesitation. As night fell, the stars appeared in the sky, twinkling like distant beacons of light. John stood for a moment gazing upward, reflecting on the journey that had brought Anna, Maya, and their mother into his life. The events of the past days had been intense, emotional, and transformative. They had reminded him of the fragility and resilience of life, the importance of compassion, and the profound impact that small acts of care could have. He returned to the house, feeling a sense of calm and purpose. Sitting by the fireplace, he thought about how the girls had taught him about courage, how their mother had taught him about honesty and responsibility, and how life had reminded him that even in solitude, one could make a difference. John understood that their story was not just theirs. It was a story of human connection, of trust, and of hope. It was a story that he would carry with him forever, a reminder that kindness, when given freely and sincerely, could change the course of lives. He smiled softly, thinking about the future. There would be new challenges, new surprises, and new responsibilities. But he was ready. He knew that life could be unpredictable, yet full of opportunities for compassion and courage. And he knew that he would face whatever came next with an open heart, a steady hand, and the knowledge that even small acts of care could have lasting impact. John Miller sat quietly by the fire, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. The ranch, once a place of routine and solitude, had become a place of memory, learning, and human connection. The experiences of the past days had enriched his life and had shown him the true value of empathy, courage, and kindness. And as he closed his eyes that night, he felt a peaceful certainty. He had been part of something extraordinary, a story of survival, trust, and love. He had witnessed courage in its purest form, and he had learned that the simplest actions offered sincerely could change lives forever. The ranch was quiet, the stars shone brightly above, and John Miller knew that while life would continue to bring challenges, it would also bring moments of connection, hope, and profound meaning.